1,500 people who were willing to add 10 bucks on their mobile phone, and we were the first nonprofit in the Twin Cities to do that. Since then, I've worked with corporate environments. I spent more than I want, more time than I cared to in Milwaukee this past summer helping out a $2 billion manufacturer clean up after a branding agency screwed up their mobile. So, and most recently, politics. Polymobile's intent was to bring mobile tools into the political realm. We were a tech startup agency with software as a service play. And then we had to do it. We were forced to do a pivot, so we turned into an agency. We're just advocacy, political campaigns, and I'm very proud of this. Only 20% of our clients lost, and so that's actually a good hit ratio for your first year. Either that, or I can just pick out good clients, one of the two. So, why is this relevant? The elections are months over. We're in a business environment, though a lot of these people, come on in. So a lot of these people are junkies here, but why is it relevant to the audience that's here today? Presidential campaigns are startups. Think about it. 3 years ago, how many people wanted to be president on both the, on both the Republican and the Democratic side? How many candidates were there? 20 or 30 more. So consider those 20 or 30 startups. How many of them won? One. And so the effort of getting a campaign up and running, the effort of fundraising, the effort of getting your messaging right, the effort of doing the operational tools, everything all along those lines, that is not unlike what startups deal with. The only difference is that those startups might not want to think this. Success is when you have to shut down the company on November 6th or 7th last year. Like startups, they burn through billions of bucks. So I saw a number where they, if you combine the caucuses and the precincts and all the other stuff, it was a $3 billion campaign this year, just for the presidential race. You throw in congressional races and everything else, we spent in the neighborhood of about $6 billion just on political events last year. That's a little bit of money. And they're hotbeds for open innovation. One of the beautiful things is on November 7th, everyone looks back and starts pointing fingers, especially if you lost. So there's an open environment there when a campaign dissolves and they did something innovative. Who brags about it? We have someone here from the Obama campaign. You were just pitching yours, weren't you?
Not later today.
Later today, okay. So he was on the payroll and he's not talking about it really. So there are a lot of interesting things that happened in 2012, and largely they all were relevant to us because we experienced it. And 2012 was called the mobile election. I think that's bullshit, but that's what they said. So, a couple quick factoids. 88% of registered voters have a mobile phone. 37% of voters use that phone in 2012, and that's up from 26%. So we're getting more and more comfortable of accessing information, sending text messages, registering to vote on a phone, everything like that. Oh, one thing too, you're welcome to take pictures of this, but I'm going to make the PDF totally available to all of you after that. So you don't have to wait for the 6 weeks for it to come through. So though I like taking pictures of it, no need to. That number. If you talk to anyone in a campaign, they say, I love young people, but they never vote. Well, 56% of registered voters use their mobile phone to engage on an issue. And here's a fun little number too. After that first debate, 10 million tweets shot out. in that time frame. Now, let's split it into campaigns. He raised $1 billion, but directly he raised 726 million from 10 million people. So when you're looking at the number that everyone looks at, and it's the small donors, those who's given under $200 an election cycle, the Obama campaign, that was 55% of where their money came from. 1 in 10 of those donations came from mobile. Whether it was an SMS tied to prior donors, whether it was Square, text to give, they called text to give successful, and successful is parlance for it was a horrible failure. But they won't tie numbers to it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So, and they only released the numbers of things that worked very well and that they could brag about. And if you never see numbers tied to things, there's your answer. And 1 million people downloaded apps, or there were 1 million app downloads. Romney. So 6 million people donated just shy of $1 billion. And that billion number combines what the RNC raised, what the campaign raised, what the super PACs raised, what little fundy girls raised in their lemonade stands, whatever you want to do it. That's the whole entire package. But the campaign itself raised less than $500 million. And 24% of that came from small donors. So you can kind of see a pattern here. And Square was very, very successful. So all they did was hand out 5,000 at the Republican National Convention and pray for the best. So Romney did something interesting. He trumped what Obama did in 2008. How many of you signed up for Obama's list? There's an open seat over there. Via text message in 2008. So if you text VP to it, supposedly you would have gotten the announcement and everything like that, and everything would have been kosher. Well, Romney did an interesting twist on this in that he said, I am going to announce my running mate on my mobile app. Didn't happen. They sent out a text message first. The media broke it even before then, and then 3 days after the announcement, the app said, "Oh, by the way," you know. So it's like, all right, good implementation there. So, and how many are familiar with Project Orca? That is a case study, a Harvard business case study of how not to launch a mobile app. And it's not a mobile app, it was a mobile website, but there was no education to the users to know how to use it. The system crashed twice. Entire states were given the wrong login information. It was a beautiful thing, and if you want to learn more about it, the link down at the bottom, Harpoon Orca. So it was a discussion of what not to do. And so here's a good example of what we can learn from and what mistakes other people made. So before we go into the specifics, let's go into their grades. I give Romney a D+ for what he did in mobile. Tried a few things, poorly implemented, did a few things kind of well, but in the end, nothing remarkable. And though you might think that I'm a big Obama supporter, he fucked up too. The innovation that happened in 2008 did not, for some reason, arrive in 2012. So there's 5 lessons that we can derive from this. Lesson 1, make your information accessible. And this is all about the mobile web. Research has shown that 66% of voters, the millennial voters, have a smartphone and they come from high-income households. 80 million voters access the information via their smartphone. That was a 200% jump over the last election cycle. And 78% and outside of this, 78% of visitors to a website that's not mobile optimized will leave. If there's anything that you can take away from today, it's that third bullet point. If you find that you go, well, only 8 to 15% of our visitors are mobile. We really don't need to update that or provide a optimized system for them or anything like that. Okay, but you're going to lose 3/4 of that crowd. Campaigns took different routes. Romney, separate mobile website. Obama obviously took a responsive site, and probably one of the best articles to break that down is from Smashing Magazine. It's about 1,500 words, so I don't recommend reading it right now, but it's a good case study of responsive versus separate. So let's look at MIT's site. Dedicated mobile site. Design flexed based on the browser, so it wasn't a fixed width. You know, it was relatively fast. The load time was a little on the slow side. Ideally, you want to get your mobile site to load in under 5 seconds, but you know what? He didn't do that bad. Navigation was top-notch. You could easily flow through that site with relative quickness to donate, volunteer, or anything else that you wanted to do. Find information, ads, video. It was pretty quick. And that's one of the strengths of having a dedicated mobile site. You know, responsive is great, but when you have an understanding of what a mobile user wants and what is looking for, you can really set up a user experience that's more attuned to that. Pages were appropriate in length. You don't want to drop anywhere more than about 250 to 300 words on a page. They set that up properly. Here's where they screwed up, though. So if you went to a link on an email, you would have a rough time. If you were lucky, and you were using that donation link on an email, and it puts you to the main site, chances are it probably wouldn't bounce you to the mobile site. So you would be looking and trying to enter in information on your mobile phone, and that just didn't fly. When you don't have content parity between both sites, you kind of wear away that large group of people who are looking for information on you as a candidate or your business or your product or anything along those lines. And some of the cool bells and whistles like GPS or anything along those lines weren't added on there. So, visually stimulating site. It's not bad. You can hit everything with your thumb. Obviously, that big red button makes a big bit of difference. But even when you popped on the menu, it worked relatively well. Let's jump to Barack Obama's. Site was responsive. So whether you saw it on your desktop or your mobile phone, it was the same content. Here's the problem. That homepage was excessive. That homepage took over 30 seconds to download. You know, that homepage killed my BlackBerry. And you can laugh at me for still having a BlackBerry, but if you see my thumbs, virtual keyboard's just not going to happen. So, and it uses what I call the toilet paper theory of mobile design. You have a homepage that's nearly 16,000 pixels long. So, like if you're a little kid that is in the bathroom and is like trying to get to the end of the toilet paper roll, you're expecting your visitors and your donors to do the same thing. Just not going to happen. So, lesson 2, be everywhere. Mobile advertising. It's exploding, no doubt. Last year we exceeded 5 billion, you know, and that was a significant jump over 2011. Now, thanks to Google and a lot of other platforms, we can target based on zip code, geography, content, radius, many different ways where you couldn't do it prior. So if I wanted to target specific keywords to voters in a college town in Ohio, I could easily do that. Can't do that with TV terribly well. Both campaigns played around with it. Obama used video ads in Spanish. So he realized that Hispanic voters are much heavier mobile users than general mobile users, and they took advantage of it. They placed ads in games. So when you're relaxing, trying to battle with words with friends, there's a campaign site popped up. And here's a kicker too. Fundraising that was tied to the mobile ads generated a lot more money than their web cousin. And you know, they used it after that first debate with great success to kind of reverse some backtracking that the Obama campaign had. So if you remember how he just choked on the first debate and they claimed it was altitude sickness or whatever bullshit excuse they used, they actually reversed that slide in the polls by doing some very interesting, very targeted mobile advertising. Romney campaign, they've been doing it forever. They've been doing it when they were in the Iowa and New Hampshire races. They spent much more than the Obama campaign on mobile, and they spread it across multiple different platforms. They used it to boost app downloads. They used the click-to-call feature. That's one thing a responsive site is hard to do when it can't tell if it's a mobile browser or something else. You can set up links to do that, but it throws off your desktop viewers. But their biggest mistake was that they did not increase expenditures when they were doing well. So when they had that nice bump in lead, they didn't maximize that by ramping up their advertising. Lesson 3, remove all your barriers. You know, conversion matters. If you just think that you can put up a form with a dozen fields on it, good luck. Keep it to 2 to 3. You know, if possible, how many of you have ever played around with progressive fields, smart fields? You know what I'm talking about? All right, so basically what it is, you get your first 3 bits of information that you want from a person. Their next visit, you get a little bit more information, like a phone number or a zip code or whatever. And over a progressive amount of time, you get a fuller view of that visit. I mean, you have to give them reasons to keep coming back, but the more information that you have coming down, the more likely they're going to be more active within your company and willing to give more information instead of just dumping that all up front. So there's this little thing called the Federal Election Commission, and you can't get away with 3 fields. You have to put down your employer, street address, whole ball of wax. They are very ugly fields, but you know, if you don't sign them up or you don't complete them or you don't ask for them, you're looking at $1 million fines, and that's not what campaigns want. Obama did something interesting. He realized that he was going to get more than one donation from people. And so on that first option, how many people have donated to his campaign? Okay. How many people of those who's dead said, save my credit card information? How many follow-on donations did you give them? 0.
2 or 3.
Okay. Because of people like her, they raised about another 180 million bucks using that quick donate feature. Whether they sent a text message out to a person or when that person visited again, they just said, hey, look, just click on a $10 button or $25 button or what have you, and that converted to an instant donation. No need to convert, you know, to fill out any more forms or anything like that. It was just an instant transaction, and that will revolutionize e-commerce. Text to Give was an experiment. I would argue not a successful experiment, but there were no reporting requirements, and you were capped at $50 per cycle. And as I said earlier, with a quick donate, Obama text messaged follow-on donors to give more. One of the examples they did is said, we're doing well in Ohio, we need a little bit extra money. Reply back to this message with a number and we'll charge it to your account. So instead of filling out this complete load of information, you could just reply back 25, and a $25 donation would be taken like that out of your credit card on record. Pretty smart stuff. Imagine if you were a pizza provider, pizza restaurant, and sent out a text saying, hey, look, we got a special deal. Reply back with yes, and we'll handle the transaction. It'll be there by the time you get home. This is not rocket science. It's stuff that we can all learn from. Apps are not the answer. I'm not anti-app, but I'm anti-starting with an app. I'm virulent anti-starting with an app. But anyway, few campaigns can afford it. You know, development times, costs, all the other factors, and a recent study showed that even in the e-commerce world, less than 6% of transactions are generated or completed on a mobile app. So all these efforts from Target and Best Buy to create an app that closes transactions doesn't quite deliver. Who wants to read that one? Who's an app developer here? You can read it.
Only 12% use apps more than 3 times.
Exactly. So you spend all of this amount of time and money in development and opportunity costs, and you run that as a risk.
Are you talking specifically about political stuff or?
Across the board. Yeah, I mean, the research is across the board. No one's going to spend any time saying that, doing that on this little narrow focus on maybe a half dozen ads that were created, or apps that were created in the political sphere. So that's a number that applies to all. Both campaigns had iOS and Android. Both of them allocated funds to push downloads, but they put a lot of effort into it. And you know, and they said, well, there's push notifications, but how many people on their iPhone or iPad approve push notifications from an app? Raise your hands if you do. All right, a few.
We get like an 80 to 90% response rate though. So of that, like 20%, people respond.
So they tend to be your greatest customers though, right? I'm not saying not do it, but the people who are selling you those push notifications tend to oversell it.
What was the question?
She responded, but who do you want to say who you work for?
Yeah, mobile application development company, Redshed Technology.
Okay. So they say that, well, why don't you say it louder?
We see a response rate of like 80 to 90% to people who receive push notifications. So they're reading it and they're acting on what we're sending.
I stand corrected. Here's Obama's, or Romney's app. I had a late night, hush. It's pretty, but it did very little beyond what a mobile website could do. And as I said earlier, that they downloaded this and they said, hey, look, we're going to announce the candidate through our mobile app, and yeah, they did 3 days after the announcement. Obama's app was a little bit more impressive because it allowed, they connected it with a database, and they allowed you to figure out who was in your neighborhood that you could talk to about the campaign or the candidate. So it gave the individual Uber supporter an opportunity to be involved in the campaign without going to a campaign site or anything. That's powerful shit. Lesson 5, don't forget to engage. What happened to SMS? No one used SMS. You know, 2008, Obama did some miraculously magical things, and then he got reelected. He raised, well, hold on a second here. In 2008, he built a list of 3 million mobile lists, and then it sat when he was in office. He tried to start that up again, but you know, I had volunteers everywhere, and even in battleground states like Michigan and Ohio, there wasn't that much volume of anything from the Obama campaign. You know, SMS continues to grow. We are still heavy users. It's low tech, but it's still effective. How many of you do not send out a text message? All right, oddballs. 2 out of a room of 50, 60. Do you have kids? All right, so.
It's 2.
2. Are they young?
2 years old.
Well, okay, fair enough. And what, you don't have an iPhone? Come on. If you're in an email if you send out a campaign email, you're lucky to get 15% open rate. Text message exceeds 90, and about 85% of those people who open it within 3 minutes. So both campaigns didn't use it. Built a list, opt-in. I mean, it took me 15 minutes to figure out where that opt-in information was on the Romney site. So I don't get this. I mean, it's the lowest common denominator. 98% of mobile phones accept SMS, and they used it excuse the French, as the bitch to email. You know, it's just like, we'll send out this event information. Oh, Romney's coming to town, and then a couple days later, they'll send out a text. That was it. You know, they didn't do segmentation based on audiences. There was so much that you can do with SMS, and they just didn't bother. So, what did these two teach us? Mobile web. Make it friendly, but do it wisely. Mobile ads, don't ignore their power. Barriers are bad for fundraising, for closing transactions, for conversion. Try to eliminate as many of them as possible. Let's be frank. Most apps suck. So if you are committed to building one, make sure that you understand your users and that you provide some serious value behind it. And SMS has ubiquity. Consider using it. Questions?
What percentage of users visit the website more than 3 times?
They don't, never release that information. So they release a lot of things, just not analytics, unfortunately. Yeah?
Point out Romney's project was Project Orca.
Yeah.
Obama's was Narwhal, right? There's an awesome article in the Atlantic from a few months ago outlining the whole IT strategy for the Obama campaign. It's a really good read.
Yeah, and that was, they updated it from 2008, so they had a bit of a head start there. But Orca was just meant to give the campaign early exit polling information, and they had 20,000 volunteers across the country. You know, a quarter of them couldn't log in. So, but I mean, even for that little tiny bit of information, you put in all this effort and it fails. Narwhal provided a hell of a lot more, and it did a heck of a lot more than Orca did. But you know, that's a good article. I did read that. Any other questions?
If you go back a slide to the barriers one, sorry, I just meant that sentence there. The barriers. There's an article on KyleRush.net where he was one of our designers, and he has an entire thing about removing barriers that would be interesting because he touches on why those things are important and gives data behind it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Don't worry about it. So, as promised, if you want to get a copy of this, text POTUS to 75309, and you'll get a text message that'll give you a link to download the PDF. Well, we finished on time. I think so. How long does this run until?
11.
What's that?
11.
Oh, okay. I don't exclusively focus on mobile and politics. You know, what kind of? I'm happy to answer any questions along the way. How many people have their own personal site or their employer's site have a mobile or mobile optimized website? Okay. Very little. What's stopping the rest of you? Is it politics? Is it lots of shaking heads? Come on, this is a safe space. Okay.
Decision paralysis.
Okay.
My employer has a large universe of sub-sites, and we've been sort of working our way up in a sense. That is, what we don't want is to have a homepage and landing page which is mobile optimized, and then wherever you go, I mean, it's we're definitely kind of on the responsive bandwagon, but we don't want it to be wherever you go, you just land somewhere that's not mobile optimized. So in a way, we're kind of slowed. We're slowed down because we've been kind of taking this universe of sub-sites and sort of working on mobile optimizing them so that we can then offer that experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So kind of our next big project is, we're finally at that point where we're going to be able to sort of flip the switch essentially, but it's been
one of the projects that my agency worked on in 2012 was that we were providing we were battling the photo ID ballot measure, and we focused on specific communities of color across the Twin Cities metro area. And so, though one of the ideas was to make their existing website mobile optimized, realistically, given the time frame and the budget, what we ended up doing is we created 3 specific mobile sites for the 3 communities, the African American, Hmong, and Somali communities that we reached out to. Both the Hmong and Somali community sites were both in English and Hmong, or English and Somali, and that is an example of a kind of like a microsite. So one of the beauties of mobile tools is that you can experiment on a very little limited set, whether you're doing, let's say, like a campaign-specific site, instead of trying to change everything at once, and you see how well it works. It's not that difficult to put up a responsive site with maybe a half dozen pages on it and see how well it scales from there on out. So though some of us might be suffering, our employers might be suffering from analysis paralysis, start small. You don't need to change everything overnight. You can start out with very simple things and kind of scale it from there. How many of you have opted into a text message list, whether it was from a restaurant or campaign or anything like that? Any of you opt out? Okay, why?
Because they don't want the spam.
Okay.
I did it for Papa Murphy's. They give you a free cookie dough when you opt in, and then you just opt out as soon as you leave the store. And next time you do it, opt in again.
So you don't want the spam. You're just trying to game the system.
Maybe that's what it is.
Okay. Someone else?
I gave up the ones with the spam, but there's a few that aren't too bad.
Examples?
Blunts and Barleys. Every 2 weeks they send you one text with something you get for free if you spend $10 in the store, and you just show them the test of the cash register.
Nice. How often do you do that?
Probably as long as it's something that I want.
Does that drive extra trips to Lunds or Barley's for you?
It probably does.
Yeah,
So it's working out.
too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like
it's nice, right?
especially stuff that you use, like eggs, milk, some
Yeah.
kind of bakery stuff.
Current one is free bananas. First pound is free.
So, and you just didn't get a free pound of bananas exactly and leave the store saying, "Hey, thanks." You
You have to spend $10.
oh, well, that's true. Anyone else? Yeah.
I opt into Herberger's. It's not too bad. They send you like a coupon every month or maybe every 2 weeks, but as long as it's not every week, I will keep it. If it starts getting like spam or out of control, then I'm like, this is crazy. I have a mother who texts me daily, so I need another app.
Yeah, that was my mistake too, showing my mother how to do a text message. I'm like, it's not instant messaging, Mom. an interesting story that just recently happened. How many of you know what CPAC is? Okay. So CPAC is the Conservative Political Action Conference. It's where all the far right of right people go and get inspired and everything. It's not evil or bad. It's one of the great events, political events of the year. And so they had Senator Ted Cruz, who was a Tea Party senator, but largely unknown to the national scale. He was doing the keynote this year, and few people. My humble opinion is that few people remember a speech, but if you can figure out a way to engage them when they're at their highest point of passion, you can start that relationship. And what he did is he sent out about 2/3 about 80% into his speech, he said, look, CNN's not going to tell our story. New York Times is not going to tell our story, and people started laughing. And but you can text growth to whatever the short code was, and we'll help you share our conservative story of how to change America. Not exact quote, but that was the gist of it. And 16,000 people did it within the first 20 minutes. And by the next morning, there was over 17,000 on that list. People know who Ted Cruz is. So not all of us get the opportunity to speak at CPAC, but these are just examples of how you can use the tool very simply to have a great impact without dropping a ton of money. So
that loans and barley thing, they probably had a sign next to the bananas that said text XYZ to get free bananas or something.
yeah.
They should.
Tell the story of bananas.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Any other questions?